I was gonna real quick give a little bit of a little bit of a spiel, a little bit of my thoughts on this thing, this thread. No, I've seen a thread from this guy previously, recently, um, and I just found it like I didn't find anything in particular to be like to be frustrating with well, it's like I don't know, it's like sort of like correct, sort of not correct. um but it was funny, like I think that one was, it was talking about something to do with like I don't feel suicidal. I just feel like I don't want to exist on this earth anymore because living is too hard. And like I just had seen a quote retweet that was like, this ideology is the stupidest thing ever. But I was like, I'm like sort of in the middle with that, because it was like later on he realizes like apparently this is called suicidal ideation. I've been told, and it's like, yeah, like that's it's still a problem, like just because but it was like I don't want people to be concerned for my health and stuff. It's just like, well, I mean, why not though? Because it's fine for people to be concerned when you've got an issue. Like it's okay, man. I don't know. um but yeah, the shipping epidemic. This one's a bit of a doozy. So it's like, you could, if you don't know, you can Google name x name and see not safe for work fanfics of said characters. Said characters. This is the first slide, isn't it? There are no said characters yet. Um, but yeah, it's the most toxic shipping fandom starter pack. Now, I've seen a lot of stuff from these communities, and there's that meme that goes around that's like, me when bad, the fan base. What is the thing? Um, I love this thing. Oh, but the fan base, I can't stand the fan base. Like, it's like the original position from that is like the art itself. It's like forget death of the artist. Like, we have to full on go to the level of like death of the fan base. Like, it I find it a little bit bizarre that people will judge like the thing itself. It immediately comes up. It's just like, oh, Undertale, I love Undertale, one of the greatest games. It's one of the greatest games. People are immediately jumping to, oh, but the fan base. It's like, I mean, like, why do you care about what other people are saying and doing online? Like, ever? Why does that have to affect you? It just seems like a bit of like an emotional maturity thing, where it's like, I don't know why it matters. But we got JoJo, which I've never seen anything of myself. Like, I don't think I've ever. I mean, most toxic fandom. Like, I've seen people just being a little bit ridiculous when it comes to like, you have to watch the show. And they've been obnoxious about it. It's really ticked me off before. And I mean, I've had a negativity bias against people like that for other unrelated reasons, which is why it's a bias. But it's like, I don't really know if I have an issue with that. Um, Specifically, this is talking about shipping. Like, never really noticed an issue with JoJo's and shipping. Um, I don't know what that is. Harry Potter, I mean, people have like shipped like crazy, but like, it's cringe, but it's never been anything where I'm like, oh, it's awfully problematic. Like, Harry and Draco, there's this sort of like, um, this culture. Maybe I don't want to get into it too much, but like, there's a sort of culture that you see, um, at least in my generation, among high school females, where they like really, like, I suppose, sexualize male gay gay activity. uh well, they romanticize it for sure, but they also sexualize it to a certain degree. And it's, I mean, that's one of the first things I saw with that. Was like, that's interesting that you think that that those two characters, Draco and Harry, being together like that. Okay, interesting. um Never really seen anything of shipping from this show. I haven't really seen the show. I've heard a little bit about it. My Hero Academia, I think, is the, yeah, toxic shipping it's not so much who they're shipping, but how religious they are about it, how dedicated they are to being like these two people are together, when it's like, well, no, that there's no basis in the actual fiction itself about that. It's not canon. And it's like, as long as you can see these and understand like there's a separation from canon and there's a separation from real life, and not freak out about it in any particular way, then I feel like you it's like that's the litmus test, is like, how emotional are you really getting about this thing? And like are you ill? Are you normal in the head? like like I feel like it's something to keep in mind, because it's like Undertale, it's like there's and there's a lot of things within these where there's canonical shipping, and people like canonically speaking, there are romantic couples that go through romantic arcs in the actual canon itself. So I don't know. It's an interesting example, but I kind of see where you're coming from with it, where it's like, yeah, the fan base is cringe, I guess. That people do cringe things within the fan base. Rick and Morty, cringe fan base for sure, but the ship, like, there's no like shipping. Like, I've never seen anybody ship anything. Like I could just be ignorant to this, and I don't know if it's just like Googling. It's like, I mean, just the fact that you can Google any particular character shipped with any particular character within a franchise, and that someone's done it. It's like, I feel like this is just an extrapolation of Rule 34. If someone's done it, yeah, of course somebody's done it. Why do you care? Like, I don't know. South Park, I've never seen anything from. Steven Universe, I've seen too much from, and that's definitely a bit of a cult of a fan base for sure. FNAF definitely has some stuff within that. Danganronpa, I'm not familiar with anything from it. Has Been Hotel, again, I haven't seen anything of it. Maybe, I'm sure, like, this is all sort of like it's a Rule 34. Once again, it's like, if you search any of these things where you take any character, it's like you could probably find anybody shipped with anybody. But like, what's the point? It's like, it exists, we know it's out there. So like, why do we even care? Attack on Titan. But then it's funny to have like Dream be the one in here where it's like, well, all of these are fictional. This is sort of, to a certain degree, a reality show. Like, it's got real people playing Minecraft together. Like, I don't know. People will ship any duo, trio, group, team rivalry, regardless of any canonical hints of romantic/sexual attraction. I feel like that's the point. Like, when there's nothing there, they will make it be there. When there is something there, then they're going to obviously, go crazy with it. That's like, they've all been shipped amongst each other. Like, it's like, yes, like, that's the way that the internet works. Like, people do this. Lots of these I haven't seen, or I'm only vaguely aware of, but it's like, I've never seen anybody do that with specifically this used to be my favorite film as a kid. What year was that? 1940, 37, whatever the piss. Peter Pan, Disney Peter Pan, like, never seen anything with that. Because I feel like this is relatively like not mainstream, because it's like an old IP. Like, I don't know, it's a weird thing for people to talk about. It's like, I've obviously seen a lot of Undertale stuff. Never seen any JoJo. Just because this movie came out recently, and it's a massively popular movie, it's like, yeah, people have been doing stuff with it. It's like, this much is like, everything presented here is true. It's like, people will ship anybody with anybody, regardless of what canonically they are sexually attracted to, either hinted or confirmed within the canon. People just ignore that, and they ascribe whatever they want onto it. It's like, that much is definitely true. but it's framed within the context of this being like a bad thing inherently, and it's like I don't really see why it's an issue. Um, no issue with kids' minors being shipped respectfully, but my issue with people over sexualize them in fanfics by defending it, saying it's fiction, it doesn't matter. Um, they're all kids. I don't care if you're a minor too. I feel like that I don't really have any issue with this. It is, I do think it is weird. Sorry, Tiger. That when to see people shipping these two child characters, Kirua and Gon. I Kirua. For some reason, I struggle with the pronouncing the Kirua. It's not difficult. I don't know why. Anyway, but it's like there's like 10-year-old boys with no sexual connotation within the show whatsoever, and then people like shipping them together. It's weird. There's nothing canonical in here. As far as I'm aware, with a lot of these things, there's nothing canonical. Steven Universe is a very confused show about a lot of the issues that it has with like gender, sexuality, romantic, like it's messy. So I don't know, like that one's a weird one. I don't really know much about the rest of them, but it's like for the most part there's nothing within the canon. I think it's this next slide. Yeah, this is the one that I'm like, so it's like parental guardian ex-child, cest ships, and any adult ex-child ship are sick. I would tend to agree, but part of my issue with this, so Rick and Morty, I've never seen anything within within the fandom where they're people shipping people together. It's really not that sexy of a show in general. There's not a lot of like wholesome romantic, like it's following the antics of a very broken home, with a lot of like crazy personality types interacting with each other. Like everyone is sort of dislikable for different reasons. It's like you've got Rick, who's a bit of like a megalomaniac, I suppose you could call him. He thinks that he can just do anything. And he has a massive ego because of how intelligent he is and how he can weaponize his intelligence. And him being the father of Beth, that sort of carried on to her, where she has a bit of an ego. Her husband is pathetic, and their relationship, started out with a single teen pregnancy, like a prom pregnancy that was like, they wouldn't have been together if not for the mistake in the family, and you could kind of see the way that, but all that pressure being put onto Summer as that person who's like, you are the mistake, we wouldn't have been together if not for your existence, puts a lot of trauma on her, but she's really hedonistic and annoying. Morty is sort of similar, where he's very pathetic in a lot of ways. He's cowardly, very rarely charismatic, but he's a 13-year-old who's extremely horny. Like the art style and it is one thing where it's like the art style is just sort of generally unattractive. It's something you see in animation nowadays. It's just, I don't know, that's the way it is. That's the way people do things. Adult animation just has to have like this disgusting, like, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston rolling around in their graves being like, what happened to appeal? What happened to appeal? If you have to sit here and animate these characters for hours on end, and if I have to watch them for however long the runtime of the show is, then I want them to look like nice to look at. And I think this show falls flat in a lot of ways in that. But regardless, they don't really have a lot of romantic tension in the same way that a lot of these other shows do, because the show is so cynical. It doesn't really believe in love in the way that a lot of other shows do, or a lot of other fictional things do. but it is kind of funny to be like ragging on incest when this show has not a supportive opinion, I wouldn't say, for like incest, but it has canonical incest happen in the show on accident, albeit, but like, and in an incredibly bizarre circumstance that would never be able to translate into real life. But it's like that there is incest that, canonically speaking, there's like, isn't the character called like the giant incest baby? Like, it's acknowledged that it wasn't intentional and that it was like disgusting that it happened and whatnot, but like it's canonically in the show because the show is like dirty and graphic and cynical and gross. So it's like, it's an interesting thing to bring up. Now, I haven't seen anything from from whatever is prompting this individual to complain about this, but I do find it interesting to specifically prop this up as an example. When it's like, I don't know, I have seen people do things with this. I don't really have much to say about. I didn't really remember like watching the show. People, I don't know. Batman and Robin, I don't know if I've ever seen anything with that in like any particular iteration. Don't and haven't watched this show, don't understand a lot of this stuff. Most of the anime on this I really haven't a single opinion on. Genshin Impact, are Genshin's characters really even characters, or are they kind of like less developed than like Apex Legends, where they've got like some backstory and they've got like hints at relationships, but you don't really see them interact in a story. So it's like, kind of, I don't know. It's like Cuphead and Mugman are brothers. I don't know if I've seen people like do things shipping them together specifically, or drawing NSFW, whatever. Like, I don't know. I'm sure it exists. Sands of Papyrus, I think I have seen. Never seen anything Phineas and Ferb. Never at all even close to seeing anything to do with Lost of Us. Like people really do that. Like, I guess if we're operating under the idea that this is a thing that just happens to everything, I'm like, okay. But okay, this is an interesting example, right? Because this show in and of itself has some really strange things happening in it, romantically and sexually speaking. So it's like, I don't know why this is a particular example. Again, like kind of worse than Rick and Morty, where it actually does believe in love to a significant degree. Like, it's kind of the opposite of Rick and Morty in that it very much, it's like anti-cynical. Like, it's very much like a doe-eyed, like childlike view on the world and on a lot of things. But again, I don't really know all that much about it. My Hero, I don't doubt. I've seen a couple things about it, but it's like, yeah, no. I mean, I've seen stuff in Gumball. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's a kid's show, and it's like, I don't know. It happens. I've never seen anything with Gravity Falls. I've gone over basically everything on here, but it is interesting. So it's like all of these are within their own canons. Mostly, like, there's nothing like where they're like baiting ships between these things. This is just people, putting their own ideas out there, where they're like, let's do like the funny incest of like I don't know, whatever they're into. But it is strange. Where it's like all of these, within their own continuities, like pretty much fine, with the exception of this. And then this is the really important one, is Dragon Maid. Now, people, it's really interesting, like, to put Dragon Maid in the context of all of the rest of these ones, because it's just like, so you are concerned with like, people see these two brother and sister, these two brothers, we see this entire family, like you have a problem with these people being shipped together within the context of the shows themselves having no canonical implication to that whatsoever, which is one of the things that was mentioned here where it's like, yeah, no canonical hints. So it's like there's no canonical hints. Is and I agree that this is happening. No canonical hints. People just do it whatever because they feel like doing it. Whatever motivates them to do that. But it's interesting that with all of these, there's pretty much no canonical hints, with this being sort of a minor exception. I mean, I can't really speak to it. I haven't really seen it, but I've seen clips and understood certain things, heard some discussions about what goes on in this that I'm like, I don't know, it's seems a bit sussy. But this being like the only one where there is straight up canonical, like, I don't know if I call it romantic, but there is a relationship, a physical, and I think to a certain degree sexual relationship between a like an 8-year-old boy and an adult woman, in the very least. Not only is she an adult woman, she's like she's the classic, like, she's 1,000 years old type of thing. Like, I don't actually know what her canonical age is, but in the show, in and of itself, isn't his name Shota Kun? Shota? Though I obviously Kun is an honorific, but I'm pretty sure that word is like, it's like the opposite of lolly. I'm pretty sure where it's like, it's male. Is that no. Well, oh no, so well, there's Shota Khan, which is like just, male version of Lolicon. But then there's, what is it? Yeah, no, his name is Shota. Shouta. Isn't, like, I swear that's a reference to the fact that it's this type of, like, character dynamic. Or he's the type of character where it's like it's a sexualized young boy. Like, I mean, I suppose I could be wrong. Like, maybe it's not supposed to be a reference at all. But within the show, in and of itself, it is an absolute. I mean, to call them sick, I would absolutely call it sick. I mean, the show has. I mean, somebody did this. Somebody went in and wrote these scenes. Someone storyboarded these scenes. Somebody, greenlit the ability for these storyboards to be used within an actual plot of the show. Eventually someone animated it, and then people, it was put out and people consume it. It's like there was an absolute definite problem within, I don't know, shall we say it Japanese culture, shall we say it weeaboo culture, or just human culture in general, where there are people who think that it is okay for an adult to be sexualizing a minor. I think there are some very dire consequences for that, but it is interesting to put this as an example among all of the rest of these, which, for the most part, maybe with two minor exceptions, don't have any sort of, parental guardian ex-child cestship, adult child ship. Like, there's none of that is actually intentionally hinted towards. It's just something that people do because people are into that, and so they want to, like, draw these characters in these situations, and that they just do it with everything. This is the creation of these two characters, where particularly, it was created to be, I suppose you could say it, pedophilic. I mean, there's a scene in season 1 of that show where two, like, at least physically, well, I don't know, canonical age of whatever her name is, but it's like two uh like kindergarten age girls are like practically making out, lying on each other in extremely sexual positions. Like it's a very, very disgusting show. Um, it, but it's also funny the way that people actually, the way that online discourse, at least Twitter discourse, has discussed this show. People will have, when season 2 came out. I mean, I seem to remember like the animation studio like physically burnt down, so it was like we didn't know if they were ever going to get a continuation. So Dragon Maid S comes out, or at least when it was announced, it's like, hey, wow, they're coming back. A lot of beautiful animation in that show. It's just, I mean, from a writing perspective, from an actual consumption of media perspective, there's just nothing going on in it. And I mean, it's a slice of life. It's like, okay, yeah, but like there's literally no drama. Like any amount of drama or action or any other elements that they put into it is just like eventually just forgotten because they just wanted to like animate people doing things. And it's like there's hardly a story here. There's not really. It's like a basic, about as basic as a story can get, where it's like you're just showing things happening, progressing from A to B. Regardless, I mean that's a critique of the show itself. When Dragon Maid S came out, people were calling the show pedophilic, not because of the literal pedophilic relationships that they have, where we have an adult woman who is taking advantage of a child, but what or like the animators who intentionally animated a scene. Like it's funny that people get worked up about cuties, so something of that caliber, where it's like these are real human beings, albeit like obviously we can take it to that level, real human beings sexualized. Very big problem, especially considering the actors themselves were underage. And it's like, well, we're going to make a movie about how sexualization of kids is like wrong, right? But then we're going to intentionally do it constantly and edit it in a way and frame it in a way, storyboard, like the entire story is done in a way so that me as a director, I can intentionally shoot like 11-year-old girls twerking. It's just like, it's very clear that you're into it, and you used someone else's kids and exploited someone else's kids in order to make what you wanted to make. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's okay. And I don't think, I don't think most people think that that's okay. But for some reason, there's a very vocal, perhaps it's a vocal minority of people who are okay with this, but are not okay with something like cuties. Or maybe they are. Like, I don't know. I've never spoken with them before. And I definitely understand a certain amount of it being a fictional character. Like, there's definitely another side of the argument to a certain degree, but it's nasty that it exists in the first place, that somebody clearly gets off to it and created it for that purpose. I don't know. Like, I think to a certain degree, the fact that it's a adult woman and a underage male, there's a lot of apologia. Is that the proper use of the term? People do not hold women accountable for sexually exploiting young boys, because everybody just assumes that there's no damage that can be done whatsoever because they like enjoy it as a 10-year-old who doesn't like know anything. It's like, hey, being sexually exploited at a young age leaves deep, lasting mental scars. And I don't think anybody should be apologizing, playing apologetics for that. Like, that's pretty messed up. But like people were getting mad at Dragon Maid S not because of the actual like pedophilic themes within the show itself. No, they were getting mad at the short dragon lady with large breasts because she was short. Like she was so short that meant that she was like a child despite the breasts. Like, okay, like you're not going to have an issue with the actual lolly character where it's like, oh, she's like 1,000 years old, but she looks like a child because the body of children turned on the people who, like the people who made the show were like, we're not going to complain about the actual sexual exploitation of a child here by you know, by a being who absolutely understands what she's doing. Um, like, not going to complain about that. We're going to call it pedophilia to animate a short woman with large breasts. That was a big Twitter moment. So I don't know how much of this I'm necessarily allowed to talk about on Twitch, as it's obviously a lot of pretty intense topics touching down on. I forget what the term lemon means, but it's just like, yeah, to be concerned that a lot of this is like I don't know, like some of those I'd be like, yeah, no, those are sick. But like a lot of this is just a fantasy, and you have to remember that. Like I feel like this fails to see the other side, where it's like I'm still kind of conflicted on this issue. I kind of see one side, but I don't know exactly where I lie when it comes to like the act, because you start to get into the predicament of, like there's so much ground that you have to cover, where you're saying how much is it morally acceptable to have a fantasy that is completely detached from reality? Is it possible to detach a fantasy from reality? Like, is it morally okay? I mean, what is wrong with incest in the first place? What is morally incorrect about that? And even if, two people can agree why it's not morally okay, is it okay within the context of it only being a fantasy and not being something that actually, individual in particular would be wanting to indulge in? Does it encourage people to indulge in that behavior in real life and do something that is morally incorrect? Like, this is a very packed moral debate that absolutely is not settled, which is why this entire thing is happening in the first place, is because people can't agree on this. But it's like, this sort of moral outrage is very interesting to watch, because it shows a very clear lack of understanding of what any arguments could be against it. It's like when I don't know, maybe you see like a Christian conservative go on Twitter and be like, I can't believe that gay people exist. Can you believe that gay people exist and are doing this? It's just like, you seem very out of touch with how much, like, it's like, yeah, this is a thing that happens because people think differently to you. You can't just be like, can you believe that this is happening? It's like, people can believe that that's happening. Like, you are not convincing anybody by clutching your pearls like this. If you really wanted to convince somebody, then I feel like the tone of this wouldn't start out with something like this. Let's talk about it the right way if you don't have selective vision. Like, this is a very smug attitude. It's very it's like you want to talk about selective vision. Like, you clearly don't see the other side of the aisle here. And I'm kind of in the middle, where I'm like, some of this I'm not comfortable with, some of it I'm like, I don't really give a crap. But like, a lot of it is just, this is just what people do. And to pretend like everybody should just like automatically agree with you, it's like, what this is it's pandering. Like, you are just pandering to the people who already have a problem with this thing. And clearly people aren't really on board with it, because it's not getting a lot of positive traction. And it said that he reposted. I'm wondering if he like clarified some things by editing, but he said, I don't like enemies being shipped. I don't mean the enemies to lovers trope. This is not going to convince anybody. Um, so it's like enemies to lovers trope within a canonical context is fine. And maybe if you're writing your own fan fiction where you have an enemies to lovers arc that is shown, like, is that acceptable? But because it's not canon, it's acceptable. Like, tell me what you're talking about, because you seem to have this sort of like prefixed idea in your mind that everybody should understand what you're saying, and that the way that you say it doesn't matter. And it's like, listen, you're pandering to people, like you are pointing to a lot of different things that, you know, the only thing that I really take issue with, like where I'm like, this should not exist, is probably like just literal pedophilia. Like that's where I draw the line. But it's like, you know, if you have fictional characters who are of age having consensual relationships that, you know, don't have a, you know, moral implication, like I don't know, incest is really dicey, right? Like it's one of those where it's like, I don't know exactly how I align on like the fictional aspect of it, as well as like what is the moral in real life. Like it's a conversation that I've never really had before, and that I've not really thought about quite so much. But clearly he's not thought about it either. Like or at least he's not thought about like, why did it, I forgot I had the thing. Thank you for the follow. Sometimes I just forget I'm streaming. I was like, I'm just rambling about things. But I don't know, it's a very heated debate where there's a lot of people who don't really know where they lie on it, and it's like, you're coming in with this like brazen anger, being like, I am like morally correct, I'm just like righteously angry, and it's like, that's going to turn off anybody who you could have convinced in having a rational, nuanced conversation about this. A topic like this requires a significant amount of nuance, and so I don't think this format suits really trying to have a conversation about this at all. When it's like that, you are touching on so many things. I mean, I've been going for like 40 minutes now, and I thought that I could make like pretty quick work of this. This is a very, very complicated situation where you're talking about a lot of franchises, lots of fictional media, and it's like, you don't get that, like, there are people who disagree with you. There are arguments that you probably have to consider, like I don't even know, like, if you want to convince people, you should, or if you really just want to have a discussion on this topic, it has to be nuanced, and this is just lacking a lot of nuance. It's like literal murderous and abusive villains that hate the protags. Abuser x abuse is a huge no. Of course. It's like, this is very clearly like, you don't understand that people don't even come close to having a problem with this, because like, these are characters, like fictional characters. Like, you know, me seeing a fictional depiction of a pedophilic relationship and being uncomfortable with that, and thinking, I think there are some moral implications to this that are very problematic. And having like, it's like, incest is very, very dicey topic. Dicey, is that the right? It's very controversial. I don't think most people are pro incest. And a lot of people, most people I think are uncomfortable with it. I think most people would agree that these things existing in media, or being sort of put out there to a significant degree, it's like, I think most people would agree on that. But it's like, you're going to find a lot of people who are just like, why do you even care? Like, why do you care that people ship, a lot of these I look at and I'm just like, does this even exist? Like, has someone actually shipped these characters together? You got like Deathstroke and Teen Titans, Robin, lots of characters I don't know. All I know about this guy is he's full. Oh, I actually, how do you do the full? I don't know if that's how he sounds. It's like I don't know a lot about these characters. It's like, but the only thing that you see. Wait a minute, isn't this Makima and isn't this canonical? Isn't this actually like a? It's not like an enemies to lovers. I suppose it's abuser ex abused. I suppose is where that fits under. But like that's, it's like you're not talking about shipping here. You're talking about the actual implications of the fiction, like the canon itself. So it's a weird example to put among where it's like these, like all the rest of these characters are always enemies. Um, but these ones stick out like a sore thumb in comparison to the rest of them. Well, as far as I'm aware, I haven't watched all of this. But it's like these stick out like a sore thumb because it's not the people who are shipping them, it's the show that's shipping them. It's the actual canon that actually has a romantic tension, the sexual tension that exists between these two characters. So it's weird to even really have them be there. This is interesting because this is an enemies to like friends situation. There's actual like it's a redemption arc on the part of Zuko. I suppose like this is obviously very different because it's like Azula is like doesn't really have the same redemption. Bill Cipher is like again, I've never seen anything of this. Like, have people ever shipped Bill Cipher and Dipper, and why do we even care? Because it's like who actually does that? It's like the amount of people who actually appreciate that, it's got to be extremely small. Flowey, Kara, Frisk, Azriel, all of the Undertale characters, like I've definitely seen that because people go crazy with it. But again, I don't think that it has anything to do with the actual characters. It has more to do with the fact that people just sexualize everything. So it's like if you're gonna have a problem, then maybe you should just talk about how people sexualize everything. It's like I feel like this is just an extension of Rule 34. This one I find to be extremely interesting. Any character, X creature, animal, ship, jail time. This is a kid show. Like, point to me, like, are the voices in the room with us right now? Are the shippers in the room with us right now? Who is actually shipping these characters from a kid show? Like, I've never seen that happen. Isn't with Shadow and this character, I don't know because I haven't seen it, but isn't there some sort of canonical implication between the two of them, if not like an actual thing with it's been expressed? I think I've seen this. I don't know if I've seen that. I don't think I've ever seen like who actually does that. I mean, people just sexualize Toriel in general, and like I don't know, people sexualize everything. So it's like, yeah, sure, I've seen that. I'm not familiar with this show. I've never seen this, and again, it's like with a lot of these kid shows, it's like point to me. Like, are they in the room with us right now? Like, who actually is doing that? And considering who's actually doing it, why does it even matter? But a lot of these, it's like I just have an issue with it being a kid show in the first place, especially if it's currently a kid show where the people who are working on it, like something like Bluey, where it's like the voice actors are anonymous because they're minors and they're trying to avoid things happening. Like I don't know, it's interesting, but it makes me wonder what what this individual's issue is, because this is a topic that again requires a lot of nuance. It makes me wonder why do you think, when do you think it is okay for people to involve each other with in a sexual context, or rather a romantic, whatever context? Like, when is it okay to have a relationship of that caliber? Because I don't necessarily. Oh crap! I screwed up. What have I done? I don't necessarily think that 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 even you know why you think that this is the case. And I mean, people have had to have these conversations a lot. What's it called? The Harkness test, where it's like, it's okay to have sex with it if it can consent, or whatever. Like, is that like, I think it's extrapolated from what he actually says within the show itself. But it's like people employ the Harkness test, where it's like, hey, if this is an intelligent animal that can speak, or an intelligent creature, like, that can speak your language, then, like, is it okay to have a relationship, romantic or otherwise, with it? Is it in the first place? Like, when is it okay? Because I think fundamentally a lot of people believe it's like, okay, the reason why it's not okay to have sexual relationships with children is because it's children cannot consent in a moral sense. Children are not mentally developed enough to actually comprehend what they're doing and what the consequences thereof are. So it's a, you are abusing somebody, that's why it's statutory, is because there's no legally recognized ability. And I think it obviously comes out of a moral idea that children cannot consent, because they are not able to comprehend what's happening. And I think even 16-year-olds, maybe 18-year-olds, I think there's many situations where it's like, you really don't know what you're consenting to. And when it comes to that level, it's like, what is required for someone, I've been thinking about this ever since I had my what's the philosophy class that I took. Like, what is the cutoff for like who deserves rights, right? What is it that makes it so that everybody should be treated in XYZ way? How should we understand that should be recognized? Is it legal? Well, I don't think that that's okay, because fundamentally, I believe that people have inalienable, the inalienable rights, human rights, God-given, whatever you want to call them. They exist whether or not your government, or anybody else for that matter, decides to recognize them. So a lot of people, they have this sort of malformed idea of like something like, we gave women the right to vote. We gave them the right. We gave black people the right to vote, and we gave it to them too late. It's like, I think that is a very malformed idea that comes out of, well, actually, some people consciously believe this, is that rights are entirely made up and can be given and taken away because that's just what the government does. When it's like, morally speaking, I do believe that there is no right to to disrespect people's inalienable rights. Like, just because it's legal to do so doesn't make it okay. And I think most people could get along with that. It wasn't okay morally to have slavery, and to have, the 3/4 law. Is that what it was? That, when black people were voting, they couldn't get, they counted to be like 3/4 of a man or whatever it was. So it's like, they're not really at all on the same level, because we don't want them influencing our elections very much at all. We want them to matter less. Like, that was legal for them to do. But that was the problem, was that it was legal for them to do it. It took a lot of moral innovations and a lot of legal innovations to finally realize, hey, this Constitution thing has not been applied evenly and equally among everybody. the letter of the law, within modern interpretations, with all men are created equal, we think, oh well, what about women? Well, it's like, well, man was sort of meant in context of human, but I think even within that context, it's like, what makes it so that we have rights? Is it intelligence? Is it like what is it? This is a very, very deep philosophical question, where it's like, does your physical body, you being physically, genetically human, is that what gives you the right to bodily autonomy? Is that what gives you the right to bear arms, for example, or the right to freedom of speech and expression? Is that what gives you that right? Is the fact that you are biologically Homo sapien? Because I don't think that that's. I think that there are going to be one day moral challenges along that, with perhaps some more abstract scientific things going on. It's just like, what if someone, if aliens came down, I think is probably the most simple example that I can go to. Is like, if aliens came down and they were like, we're going to alien all over the place, and we just started slaughtering them because it's like, hey, you're like completely different species from us. You're from a completely different like branch of the like, you're not even humanoid of the whatever, but like, I know you're intelligent, but you don't count. It's like, what if they just what if they were intellectually the same as us, or what if they were, it's like, what if it's essentially just you? It's like, what if they are just like you, they just come in a different package? And I think that that's a very, very important thing to think about, because it helps you understand the principle behind why we believe what we believe when it comes to inalienable rights. At a certain point, there were many people, it was the majority opinion of really the entire earth, that if you came in a different color, then you were not the same. So you had white supremacy in America, for example, or wherever you want to point to, where it's like, black people were not seen as human. There's all sorts of groups that have been labeled as subhuman from whatever perspective, whatever aisle. But it's like, they never stop to consider, hold on a second, could they be just like us, just in a different package? And I think that was important, because it's like, back then they were like, well, they're not human though. It's like, okay, biologically speaking, we know that they're human because, that they're human. We have a common ancestor. There's obviously a different race, and Darwin's laws sort of can help explain why the races diverged and why cultures diverged to a certain degree. But regardless, the principle there is, I think that people, a person's a person no matter how small. Not to quote Dr. Seuss too much, but I mean, clearly a lot of y'all never grew up watching getting the Sneetches read to you as a kid. It's all about, hey, these innate characteristics don't matter. Why are we judging people for their appearance? Why are we judging people for their whatever? When we could, Martin Luther King Jr., content of the character. Why don't we focus on that? But to get back to applying this, I think, when we consider the Harkness test being like, he has sex with aliens all over the place, and creatures that are not humanoid, or just creatures that are not human in general. Maybe they are humanoid. They're sort of similar to the look of humans, but it's like, they can consent because they're just, it's just, he's just like me, just in a different packaging or whatever. And it's funny, like, that he'd been described as omnisexual, which was like I feel like pansexual as a terminology is like sort of strange because it's used to apply to only humans, when really it kind of, it's like pan means like, everything. And it's strange because it's like, well, sexually dimorphic species, it's kind of an interesting thing to label yourself as. I think if we're talking mere technicality, pansexual would and omnisexual would be like the same thing, but omni just sounds like it fits more within the context of a show like Doctor Who. I don't know. Um, I think there's going to be a lot of ideological evolving when it comes to this type of thing. But it's interesting. It's like when we go to this, I feel like the principle that two creatures that are not the same species specifically are not allowed to have romantic relationships or sexual relationships is not a principle that will be applied evenly, because I think it comes down to the fact that it's just like they are not phenotypically the same. They look very different. Um, and that is the same principle that caused racists, and still to this day causes racists to harass interracial couples and to talk about it. I mean, they refer to it as like interbreeding and like race mixing, these very angrily charged terms where it's like there is bigotry against people who, it just makes me wonder like what happened to love is love, which is never anything I necessarily agreed or disagreed with. It's just kind of a benign statement, but it's just interesting to consider. It's like, there are people out there who think that because phenotypically you do not look the same, that you should not be able to have a romantic relationship, let alone a sexual relationship with each other, because it's not okay. But it's like, scientifically speaking, if any of these pairings, and I don't want to put the image in my head of like kids show characters having sexual relations, but like if any of these pairings had a sexual relationship, there would be no possibility of a child being, any sort of offspring happening due to that, because scientifically speaking, they're different species. You cannot have viable offspring if the genetic code diverges too much. There's not even really any chance of conception, because the genetic code comes together and it's like, we're kind of incompatible. It's kind of like not enough that's similar between the two of us, so it's kind of weird for that to happen. I just think it's coming from the same place, the same people who say, I don't want to see black people and white people interbreeding, which happens on both sides, by the way. Crazy white supremacists who are like, we're the white genocide is happening, everybody's gonna like that. They agree on this when it comes to, it's like, black supremacists and white supremacists would be perfectly happy if there was like a black ethno state created in I don't know, let's just say Oklahoma. I don't know, just specific part, like where it's like all of them can go there, and then we don't mix and we don't breed and we don't do any of this, and we're going to be happy because we're going to preserve our genetic, like it's like, that is just a weird, like, sick, like, I think frankly evil thing to think. But they agree on it in a sense where it's like, I don't want anything to do with you and you don't want anything to do with me, and we don't want genetically to do anything with each other. And it's like, well, hey, you kind of taken everybody else out of the equation, where it's like, hey, black woman, white man, or the white woman, black man, whoever, like, if two people are consenting to it, is there somebody you forgot to ask? It's like, why do you care so much about it? It's like, we shouldn't be interbreeding. It's just like, okay, like, convince me on that, because I don't care. Like, like, what is actually wrong with it, first of all? And second of all, why are you trying to police what I do with my bodily autonomy? Because I feel like that's a road that you don't want to go down. You can see a lot of these principles aren't really principles at all, really. I mean, you've got unprincipled people trying to police other people's decisions and all sorts of things. And it's just, this is interesting to see. I just think it's interesting to see that there's this inconsistency. Because, again, I really think it comes from the same place. If at one point people were like, well, races, if they thought in their minds that races were essentially like different species and that it was wrong to interbreed in that way, or that it was wrong for them to love each other and to be with each other, it's like, you're having an issue with actual love here. Now, this is something that I don't think the world is ready to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm done with being a coward about things. Let's say, here's a thought experiment. Let's say some sort of crazy thing happened. Like, what was that movie where a guy like had his brain like teleporting between all sorts of different people, and he starts to have like a romantic relationship with was it a guy, or was it, I don't even know how it works. But it's like, he has to come to terms with like the fact that he every single day spends a day as a different person. So he's like used to, I mean, that's a very fascinating concept, but let's say it's something like that, except it's a one-time thing. Or maybe it's like some sort of I don't know, accident or miracle of modern science, or like angel of death experiment, botched human experiment or something. But let's say, hypothetically, that we've got a human whose entire consciousness, let's not say brain, let's not say just their soul, that they themselves as a thing, as a consciousness, whether or not you believe in souls, let's say that was transplanted into let's just say a dog. And so they had all the same intelligence, the same thoughts, memories, experiences, everything, but they're within a body that they have to relearn how to work in, that doesn't have the same tools that our bodies have, that has some of the upsides and downsides. Let's say that's the case. Let's say that person was already in a romantic relationship. Is it now like, obviously, I don't know, imagine your significant other suddenly turning into an animal, a creature. Like, if you can't really look past the flesh, like I mean, there's a thing about, definitely something to be said about like sexual preference, like the type of thing where it's like, would you still love me if I were a worm? I think the original version of that thought experiment, or that question, was, would you still love me if I were the opposite gender? Would you still like be with me? And it's just like, listen, I'd have feelings for you, but I wouldn't be able to abide the flesh in that way. I can't really, not really okay with being in a relationship like that. Like, that would be interesting, like, sort of a thing to consider, because it's like, I absolutely think that an individual, maybe many people, would be like, okay, my significant other is now in the body of a dog. There's nothing that we can do to reverse it. They have to relearn how to live because they don't know how to control the apparatus. Maybe eventually they learn to speak. Maybe they learn to figure out that, they have like certain tools to be able to do things like, but regardless, like, someone in that predicament may very well still have sexual needs, and if they actually end up finding love within that state, again, what happened to love is love is the question that I have to ask there, because it's like, I feel like a lot of people see issues like pedophilia, zoophilia from the idea that it's just these two things don't go together. It's like, you can't have a dog and a human be in love, and I think that much is true, in the sense that a dog cannot comprehend what love is to the same level and really level with the human on understanding what that means. But when you up the intelligence of that animal, And you up the maturity of that animal, because intelligence and maturity are very different things. You can be very intelligent but very immature, um, like or inexperienced. Like you could take something, and I think there's lots of NSFW material that probably delves into this, where it's like we're taking someone who doesn't understand the concept of this thing and sort of being like, okay, we're good. Like I think, what have I seen that with, like I don't know, like SCP-1471, where it's like, oh, I don't know what, like, gaslighting and ill-informing this creature on what is scary in order to get sexual gratification out of it. It's like, oh yeah, no, are you sure this is scary? Because you don't look scared, you look aroused. It's like that type of thing. Like obviously that creature doesn't understand what it's signing up for. So there's a certain amount of, you know, morally speaking, I think that's pretty dicey. But in the sense of like, I don't know, like let's say it's like a werewolf type situation where two wolves in love. Friggin' Scooby-Doo reference. I don't know how many Scooby-Doo references I've got like in my brain, but I don't know. The autism is very interesting sometimes. Regardless, it's like you've got two people who, like, every full moon turn into La Criatura. It's like, are we gonna have a problem with them still loving each other and expressing that love to each other via whatever means they prefer? As long as they are completely in their right mind, and maybe even if they aren't in their right mind, then that's okay, because a husband and a wife can get drunk together and sort of mutually agree that it's just like, hey, well, what happens is obviously something that we're signing up for. Like, I don't know, being mentally conscious is part of it. That there are fetishes that explore this. There's all sorts of stuff that explores this in a way where it's like, hey, we're making sure that the consent is still here. And it's interesting to see, because it's like any character, X creature, animal, ship, jail time. It's like, so you think that anything that is human and compared to something that is not phenotypically human, because I think human in the sense of, biologically human is a different thing from human in sort of the more abstract sense that we use it, where it's like, hey, I'm human. I'm like a creature with thoughts and feelings and complicatedness in everything that makes me me. So it's like, you could absolutely have, hypothetically speaking, in a fictional scenario, you could absolutely have a character who is human, just in a different packaging. And I think that's something that we ought to consider when we're going forward with this type of thing. Now, it gets tough, because it's like, okay, let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that everybody agrees that it's the ability to communicate with human speech in a way that you can present yourself to be able to be fully competently aware of what you're signing up for when you are entering into a relationship with somebody. So Toriel could absolutely have friendships, could absolutely have, I think, or a character like her perhaps could have relationships up to and including sexual relationships, and I think that would be completely morally fine, as long as both of them can be proven to consent to that. It's like, okay, within a court of law, we'd have to examine. Let's say we were looking in a court of law. We're considering, like, okay, we've got, like, we would have to prove that both people were competent to consent, like mentally aware of and comprehending everything that's going on. Now, considering just the idea of human speech being, uh, communication in the sense that, like, let's say you couldn't speak in this fictional dog scenario. Like, you couldn't speak, but you could communicate through, I suppose you've seen dogs that'll like communicate by pressing buttons and whatnot. Like, let's say if it was more advanced and you could actually like write, essentially, you could type out things and eventually, consent to things in that way, or at least present yourself to be reasonably competent to understand what you're signing up for. I It's like, as long as that's provable, and I think the speech thing is what makes it provable. So it gets a little bit difficult with stuff like Pokemon and the dragons from How to Train Your Dragon, where they're quite intelligent and they understand human speech, to a very significant degree. I think maybe Pokemon more so. Whereas there's a lot of like instinctual things, lots of things that's like, well, I don't know if the intellectual level is at the level to be capable of consenting to something like that. Whereas Pokemon, I feel like, get a lot closer to that. And canonically speaking, there's even stuff like in every Mystery Dungeons game, you go from being a human to being a Pokemon and playing as a Pokemon, and like having that scenario play out, like where these creatures really are presented to be completely intelligent. So theoretically, if they could learn English, like perhaps a character like Meowth is a Pokemon, but knows English, and I think could very well possibly at least mature to the level of being able to consent to something like that, and to be able to comprehend what's going on. It's like I think my principle is the ability to comprehend and to consent to whatever behavior they are going to be involving themselves in. And it's like we can go from there. Like, because it's strange. It's like, so we've got humans and monsters in Undertale, but each monster has very much a different phenotype. They don't really look to be the exact same, and actually they have many behaviors that are very different. For example, boss monsters, which most people just call like Goat Lady, or Azrael's a goat, or Ralsei, Asgore, whoever from this specific phenotype of monsters. They just call them like goats, but they're not goats actually. They're called, canonically speaking, they are boss monsters. They the soul persists for a certain amount of time after death, which means that the soul is a little more resilient than the average monster soul. In comparison to humans, a human soul is very resilient, quite resilient, in fact, to the point that its power can be weaponized after death. As an actual physical talisman, they have the power to use the power of the soul after death, whereas the only monster that can do that is a boss monster, and that's not even necessarily true. That's actually the entire reason Flowey exists. Which, I mean, very fascinating world building in Undertale. Very, very well done story. At least I think so. I've never really seen any contradictions within the story. It's a pretty tight story. But it's like you have other monsters, say Alphys, I think I've pronounced it Alphys before, Alphys, and Fish Lady, what the piss is her name? Undyne. Alphys is an Undyne. The lesbians, we love them. But it's like they have a relationship, a romantic relationship, and quite possibly it gets sexual later. Like, it's not canonically confirmed that it is sexual, but they at least canonically have a kiss or two. They have feelings for each other. It's canonically in the show. Sorry, not show. It's canon to the video game in the continuity of the story itself. But they're not phenotypically the same. So under this idea where it's like, okay, but they're two creatures, so it's fine. Well, it's like, when animals, like, when two creatures do it, is like, would it be okay for two monster species to have a relationship with each other, up to and including sexual relationship? Because they're not human, do we not hold them to the same standard, despite them being just as intelligent or perhaps more than us? Like, what is the principle behind this? So it's like, canonically in the text, it's okay for I hate using text in that context. It's ridiculous. In the universe, in the story itself, it's okay for like Undyne and Alphys to have a relationship, but a human and a monster could not have a relationship in the same way. It's just kind of funny to use this character as an example, because I feel like this game, its messaging disagrees with that significantly, because the game is all about really like love, acceptance, and not judging books for their covers, and to like never give up on sort of the human spirit, for lack of a better term. Like, I feel like this game believes more in love and love than this person does. And maybe that's just because they haven't thought about it, but perhaps there is actual bigotry behind that, where, let's say in a different time, I don't think it's that, it is not that logically dissimilar to say, these two intelligent beings do not look the same, therefore they are not the same, and they cannot love each other. At least not in a way that I'm going to approve of. People said that about black people and white people. People said that that black people were not human, or they were subhuman, they were less intelligent, or whatever it was that brought them to that determination. They were not okay with the idea of that happening. I feel like that's not dissimilar to being like, oh, Toriel is a monster and you are a human. It could never work. It's like, I don't think that the narrative of that game would agree with you. Not that you necessarily care. It's just an interesting example to bring up. And I think that eventually we will progress to a state of mind where we believe that human rights, being human, is less about being genetically Homo sapien than it is about being, I suppose, rationally. Is that the way that, I think that's the way that Aristotle put it, is rationally self-interested, which some people took, because the way that I saw it is when we were having this discussion in the philosophy class. I'm getting very long-winded here. It's gone for an entire hour 20. It's ridiculous. I didn't want to take this long on it, but it's a very complicated topic. When we were discussing this topic, I was like, one-on-one, we did like the Microsoft Teams split off into groups because it was during COVID and I wasn't in person for classes. And I think I didn't get heated, but I got a little, like, I kind of would challenge people a little more cynically than perhaps I should have. Like, because I don't believe in subjective morality. I believe in some form of objective morality on some scale. I'm just not entirely certain where I place it, because there's valid arguments against a lot of where I draw the line, so I can't really find a particular principle to evenly apply morality in that sense. You can always like point towards, hey, I'm sure we can all agree that pedophilia is evil or something like that. But again, that doesn't always work, because there isn't some sort of innate sense within every single human being on Earth that will agree on any particular topic. And unfortunately, that one is no exception. But I remember like having this discussion where I had said, the thing that makes us deserving of inalienable rights is the fact that we as humans are rationally self-evident. We are intelligent, but we are rationally we are rationally self-interested. And they answered, how can you not be, what if you aren't rationally self-interested? Then I'm like, well, then you're not human. I feel like you don't understand what that means. And maybe to a certain degree, I didn't understand what it means. Rationally self-interested. Just want to put it away for a little bit just to make sure that I'm not seeing, like, I'm not giving away, like, I don't know. I don't know what I might show up, but while streaming, it's always safe to be like, rational self-interest is a behavioral assumption that economists make. Not economists. Philosophical definition. I don't care about the economical. Rational egoism, also called rational selfishness, is the principle that an action is rational if and only if it maximizes one's self-interest. Well, because in that case, that's not entirely the concept that I'm getting at. Perhaps what I'm trying to say is something a little more abstract than that. It says individualism is, I mean, it's just a very complicated topic, so it's tough to, point here or there where it's like, this is where the philosophy really is. Unequivocally, in its strong form, rational egoism holds to not pursue one's own interest is unequivocally irrational. Well, human beings are irrational, but we still have human rights, so I think maybe I was wrong about that. So it's probably me who misunderstood what that meant. Failing to pursue self-interest is not always irrational. I would probably agree with the weaker definition, if that's the case. Element of nihilist philosophy in Russia. That's very interesting. I really wonder what it is. Egoism, ethical egoism, existentialism, lots of isms that I'm not really sure where exactly, like, where my principle lies on it. But I do think that, when there becomes a certain level of intelligence, when there becomes something to whatever degree, you can end up with a creature that does not look human and actually is as physically far from being biologically human as possible, but is just as mentally human as can be. And I think in those situations, if there is some sort of a relationship to be had between a human and that creature, then that is absolutely acceptable, so long as there is an ability to rationally comprehend what they're signing up for in order to be able to consent. And I think this, pearl clutching is very much ignorant of, like, I don't think the last, like, probably 45 minutes that I spent on this stupid image, I don't even know, this slide in particular, it's like, I don't think you have thought about this in that way. Like, with the concept of, like, the dog brain transplant or consciousness transplant, soul transplant, like, would that person have to live out the end of their lives celibate, or like what? It's very interesting. Invincible season 1, I don't know about the comics, but Invincible season 1, the show at least, explores this in a bit more detail, where it shows that, Beast Girl, that's her name? Monster Girl, every single time she transforms into a monster and remains in that form, it chips away at her physical age, so she de-ages. So she ends up being, like, phenotypically, she has the body that is the age of 7 or something, but 12, I think it was 7, 8, but rationally, mentally, she's like 25. So it's like she still has, sexual needs as a sexual person, but she can't do that because, as she puts it, I only get creeps. I only attract creeps. So it becomes a very difficult predicament to be in, where it's like, we're not at the point, nowadays where we can look at, like, there's no precedent for it. Both legally and morally speaking, we have not been challenged on this to actually decide what we think about it. So I know where I generally would be when it comes to the principles, but it is interesting to consider that I don't think anybody who thinks this has even really thought about it all that much. Why do we deserve the rights that we deserve? What gives us bodily autonomy? What gives us the ability to use our bodily autonomy in a way, in conjunction with somebody else's, to have sexual contact with them? Because I would never draw the line specifically at humans can only ever have any sort of relationship with humans, because to do anything else would be wrong, simply because they are not biologically, phenotypically the same. Like it's not to say that we should be encouraging certain relations between man and beast. I think beast is an applicable term for it. It's like it doesn't pass the Harkness test. It's not intelligent. It can't comprehend what it's getting into. So it's like it's like that's a no-no from my perspective. But I would really want to get to the bottom of it and ask this individual, like, what is it that gives us that bodily autonomy in order to be able to consent to a romantic / sexual relationship with somebody else? Where do you draw the line, and why? What is the principle behind your decision here? And I don't think clutching your pearls is something that is so nuanced that I had to spend this long doing it. I mean, granted, I'm a pedantic individual, autistic and whatnot, but like, it's just an interesting thing where it's like, you're clutching your pearls, but there are plenty of people who have thought about this evidently much harder than you have. Because if you had thought about it at all, you would realize that there's a lot of perspectives on this that you wouldn't agree with, and that you disagree with, that you would actually have to go point by point to actually be able to have a discussion on this, which is why I don't think that this is the format at all for this, unless the entire intent is just to serve as confirmation bias for people who agree with you, which we get enough of that. I'm sick of Twitter with all of its confirmation bias in that sense. It doesn't do anything productive. This is not encouraging any sort of a conversation. It's saying, I disagree with you. I'm not going to hear you out. I'm not even going to explore it from I'm not even going to rationalize my position. I'm just going to say, this is my position, and I'm disgusted that people don't agree to my principles. Even though I can't explain my principles and they remain only in my head as a mystery to the rest of the world, I'm going to make it very well known through my outrage that I believe what I believe. Well, it's like, I don't even know if you can tell me why you believe it. So what is actually even the point of making this at all? Like, they're fictional, they're not harming anyone, so why does it matter? Let people have fun. They do it with real people. This is a whataboutism. This is actually a false equivalency, because it's like, oh, they do it with real people. Okay, but we weren't talking about real people. We're talking about the fictional ones. I think, this, parasocial shipping, way worse on the fanfic side for celebrities, celeb X reader, celeb X character, celeb X celeb. Yeah, it's parasocial. It's oftentimes, I think, a result of poor mental health. Frankly, I think it's mental illness. I mean, if it serves as any further proof that there are BTS fans that are not mentally well, I think that this is it. Um, but I think a lot of the parasociality of it is because they don't see them as real people, and that's why they justify being able to draw them in predicaments like this. Um, I mean, if BTS is an interesting microcosm because they obviously don't view them as real people and don't have an emotional maturity to understand how things work. Um, like I was gonna make a video on BTS because it was just so, you know. Um, but I find it to be a very interesting thing to say, where it's like, I kind of agree that, you know, Septiplaya, it's like that is like that there is something wrong with you doing that when you're considering these are real people who know each other that are still alive. There are consequences to what you're doing. That's, this is really sus. Um, Same sort of situation for this, but obviously this has a lot of other issues that come with that, which I could spend hours talking about in and of itself. Um, Jensen Ackles, uh, I don't actually know what the context for this is. Is that something to do with Supernatural? If you ship Supernatural characters, or any live action character for that matter, are you shipping the actual people who portray them? Because it's like parasocial shipping. These are two fictional characters. You shipping them together, um, maybe this individual would take issue with it because it's like a mentor, um, to trainee sort of relationship, sort of a surrogate father relationship in a sense. Um, and he would have moral issues with that, that I could sort of understand where you're coming from with that. But these are actors playing fictional characters. When people parasocially, I had an ex-girlfriend who was very parasocially obsessed with Tom Holland Spider-Man, to the degree of, I mean, it's okay to cry, I suppose, when a character that you really love dies within, on screen. But she was like crying and being like, that's my boy, you know. It's like, okay, this is a fictional character, like, get over yourself off a second. Like, the parasocial sense was definitely there with her. But it's like, these are fictional characters at the end of the day. Just because it's using the likenesses of the true actors doesn't mean that they're actually putting the actors into that situation. It's interesting. Daniel Radcliffe once described, he had said, one of the weirdest experiences of my entire life was seeing myself as a Lego action figure. Is, I believe, it's near verbatim. He did say Lego action figure, which is not accurate. Because he was referring to a minifigure, but whatever. Wouldn't necessarily fault him for not knowing the difference, but it's like, it's his likeness, but it's not really him. It's the character that he played. So people shipping two characters just because those characters were physically acted by other people, like real people, it's like they're using their likenesses. So it's more so they're shipping their likenesses as in relation to the characters themselves. I don't think anybody ships actual Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland. Well, I wouldn't say I don't think anybody does, because I'm certain there's somebody out there who's had a twinkle in their eye thinking of that. But it's more so about the characters and people's attachment to characters is kind of removed from their attachment to the actors portraying those characters. I mean, they're not real people, so you have to keep that in mind. I mean, Dream is a clear example of parasocial behavior. It's like, yes, these are real people, but this is removed. This isn't even this. This is not even Dream's likeness. Neither of these people had a face reveal at the time. This is just what they imagined these two to look like. And it is parasocial in the sense that it's like, oh, we have Cope husband and we have Dream, and the two sexy boys, and because I'm like a teenage female that finds gay men in erotic scenarios attractive, which I don't mean to say that condescendingly. I mean, if you're into it, you're into it, right? But it's like, this is a result of someone's, this is more so a result of someone thinking a certain way than it is like, it's like they don't do it because of the people necessarily. They do it because of themselves. In the sense that, like, you know, people shipping all of these characters, they don't ship them because of the characters themselves necessarily. They ship them because that's just what they do. They like shipping people. Like, if you're like a Rule 34 artist, that's just what you do, is you draw NSFW, which is a term that I never have agreed with. It's a not a pejorative. What's the word? It's a euphemism. It's like, why do we have to neuter our language to that degree where it's like, it's not smut or porn or hentai or whatever, because those have different connotations. It's NSFW. Anything that's not W is NSFW. You should probably be doing work at work, and if you're doing anything other than work, then it's probably not safe to do it, because you could lose your job over it. It's kind of a stupid nomenclature that I've never really liked, but then again, people feel more comfortable saying that because it doesn't have the connotation of porn. That it's like, the entire reason for bringing this up, again, this is a very complicated issue that I would agree with, in the sense that it's just like, I don't like it when they do it with real people, but they're not really doing it with real people here. And in the same sense, not really with real people here either, just with their voices and their personalities and the, you know, physical sort of character designs of the personas that they have, you know, in association with that. Like, this is a very complicated topic. This is a very nuanced topic, but the entire reason you brought it up is because people say they're fictional, they're not harming anyone, so why does it matter? Let people have fun. You don't have an answer to that, so you have to be like, oh, but they do it to real life people as well. That's a whataboutism. You didn't actually answer the question. Let's say that it's always bad to have parasocial shipping, which, I mean, you know, I think I would agree that, not even for the sake of argument. I don't think that this is, I think there is a lot morally wrong with this and this and this and this to a certain degree. But then this is like, okay, this is removed from the actual people themselves. It's about the characters. So it's like, I wouldn't even put that under parasocial shipping in the same way. Like, it's just people being obsessed with the characters themselves. And can you be parasocial with a fictional character that was portrayed by a real life actor? That's a little bit tough to really know the answer on right off the bat. But it's like, doing a lot of thinking about this. I don't think you did much thinking about it at all. I think the most thinking you did about it was actually just drawing it up and making it look fancy, which is part of why this has been so poorly received, is because you're not making any good arguments and you're not aware of the counter arguments. You're just saying things that feel just about right. But it's like, well, I don't think you know why you believe what you believe. So how about you use this to rationalize your position rather than to validate your position? Because to feel personally validated is perfectly fine. But in the context of a debate, you feeling as personally validated about your position as possible doesn't mean that you are necessarily right about it, because you will not be able to prove that you actually know what you're talking about, that you actually know why you believe what you believe, and you are willing to defend it if you can't rationalize your position on it. And this doesn't at all rationalize your position, because it's kind of irrational, a lot of this. I think particularly this frame in particular, it's like, this is irrational. You have not explained your principle behind this, and you've done a whataboutism. You've pointed to the false equivalence, where it's like, yes, I agree. Let's agree that is not okay, but like, it's like that's basically all that I've got to say about that. Like, why did you even bring it up if it's completely separate from what we were talking about? And it's like, he doesn't even address that. He's just like, for the Bakugo Deku fans, I support the growth of Bakugo and the close friendship he has with Deku, but they're not lovers. Please stop romanticizing and sexualizing mine. It was with your weakness. Oh, weakness. Weak ass think pieces. Does that mean brain think pieces? Does anybody say that? that seems pretty strange. That's like, I think that there can be a very rational conversation that you can have with people about this. Canonically speaking, I think it wouldn't be too difficult for people to agree. Okay, let's say canonically, let's look at what's in the actual canon, what's in the text, dare I say it. Is there any sort of romantic relationship that you can point to being like undeniably where's your evidence that this is happening? And I'm sure a lot of the shippers are like, well, there's no evidence of it. It's my personal fantasy, and I just like thinking about it and drawing it and consuming drawings of it, or whatever it is. I think there are plenty of adults that be able to do that. It's just like, no, it's just me having fun, and they're not actually canonically like this. That's why I'm making it, is that I'm showing it, I'm just the messenger. No, it's like people want to see, like, for example, an alternate universe story where perhaps that happened, because it's fun to indulge in those fantasies. People enjoy doing it, and certainly, like, just because they enjoy doing it doesn't make it right. But I don't think that in a lot of cases people are doing anything wrong by doing this. And this post, that this thread, this comic, whatever the piss this is, does not make a good argument. It doesn't really make a single good, nuanced, well-formed argument to actually convince people otherwise, which I think is why this has been so wildly unsuccessful. I mean, this was posted this morning. It's been up for many an hour, and when you see the amount of quote tweets, that's a bit of a ratio. This is a 5,000 follower person who does nothing but complain and condescend people in these, like, that's why I find this part ironic. If I haven't mentioned a specific issue, don't bitch about it in my comments. Instead, be useful and make your own post to help spread awareness. Which, for all of your faults, I have done that by doing this, and I think I've actually been far more informative and nuanced and rational than you have been in this entirety of you making this piece. And I haven't really been condescending either, which you can't stand doing. Only if you're not scared to do it. Like, you're being a child about this, and you're not thinking about this really at all like an adult, and you could really tell by this attitude, and I find this very ironic. In reality, majority of these people will never change, but they're still obnoxious weirdos to me. I don't care that they are obnoxious to you. Like, obnoxious weirdos on the internet are gonna do obnoxious weirdo internet things. There's nothing that you can really do about that. So, like, stop making it your own problem. Because, like, it really, like, your emotional control, ironically coming from me being autistic, sensitive bitch boy, you're not being very mature about this at all. Because I think well-adjusted individuals see this type of thing happen where it's like, oh, that's a little bit weird. Not my thing, but okay. And they close the tab and go back. Thank you for the engagement, he said while holding back tears. It's kind of funny because Zach is, I mean, the Twitter incest sexpert. Alabama boy. It's a big thing. I mean, I don't know about him and his personal life, but he is very much he is very much aroused by incest. At least it seems to be. So it is funny to see like him showing up here, but it's just they're still obnoxious weirdos to me. Is the fascinating part there. It's like, why do you care that people are being obnoxious weirdos? And why should we care that it bothers you? You fragile little bitch. like again, I don't want to be condescending, but like, please explain to me why we should give a cramp. Why should we care that you that you care so much about what other people do? Like, I don't know, man. Yeah, thank you for the engagement. Take care of your mental health before you argue with me. You have more issues to worry about than being a loser online. And it's like this attitude is like, you clearly aren't a well-adjusted individual. You clearly have taken a lot of this to heart. It's clearly kind of scratched your I mean, it's touched a nerve. I think that's the phrase I was looking for. But it's funny to take care of your mental health before you argue with me. What it seems to me is that you got pissed about Googling, like you Googled things, or you ended up seeing it one way or another, and you got pissed about it. And rather than realizing that that's a you problem, you decided to try and make it everybody else's problem. So you went out preaching, pearl clutching to the choir about this issue as you see it. And I mean, I suppose it is an issue in the sense that, you know, you can have a discussion about it. But in the sense that it's like, I mean, it just really doesn't matter all that much in the context of fictional characters. Like there's a lot of things in here that it's like, I think I have common ground with you. But I think you don't understand you were pissed at something, and so you attempted to do this as a way to validate your discomfort with seeing that happen. You did this in an attempt to make yourself feel better about your discomfort, and to get the validation points from other people who agree with you. So this serves as a way of you, confirmation biasing, encouraging a confirmation bias in yourself and in other people. But you cannot rationalize why you think the way you think, and that is why people have not agreed with, well, people have not been happy with it, is because the people who agree with even just a modicum of what you've said, which it's like I agree with every once in a while some of the spirit of what is said here, but there's not. It's like, well, the stuff, the actual assertions that are being made in a lot of cases, and a lot of the lack of media literacy, and that's what's kind of funny. If I haven't messaged a specific issue, don't bitch about it. It's like, oh, but does this count as mentioning it? Because all of these characters of like immensely complicated situations, because every single character has a story that they're a part of. They have a certain amount. It's like these are, characters are sort of like reflections of, that they're fictional people. They're supposed to be like kind of like real people. So it's like, why is it that you can just go out and say all of this stuff and then just, oh, if I didn't mention anything specifically, does it count that you showed these characters here? In such a, it's like, yeah, I think it is very ironic to say take care of your mental health before you argue with me. It's just like, you intentionally framed this in a way with this smug ass attitude and were condescending constantly with it. You cannot expect people who disagree with you to be civil about it when you draw first blood in that way. It's like there's not much room for decorum when you enter the room throwing the decorum out the window. And of course, people have done worse. That there've been significantly worse things in other scenarios that I think it's like, well, when it comes to decorum, simply coming in hot is something that a lot of people do, and they can still be right. The thing is that there's a concept I've been thinking about recently where it's like, I was listening to a podcast and it was mentioned, it's like, if you're smug and correct, that can often be, for a lot of people, like a +2. But if you are, it's like you're winning. But if you are smug and incorrect, then you look like a buffoon, you look like an idiot, you look like a fool, you look like an ass, and you're making an ass of yourself online. And you know what? When you do that, it's like, you're opening yourself up to more criticism just by doing this. And so only the people who have just as little of a rational position on this as you do are going to sit here and agree with you and to give you your clap for you, give you validation points. And it's like, you came in not knowing your shit, and you ended up just spewing a bunch of crap that doesn't convince anybody, at the same time of belittling the people who disagree with you. And it's like, if you go into a situation like this not knowing what the other side thinks, not understanding it all, because it's like, for a lot of this, I'm in the middle of it, just sort of being like, I don't really care either way. But there's some of it where I'm like, I really don't know what I think about it. I have a lot of issues, but I don't really know where to, place myself in terms of which side I'm on, I suppose. It's like I can go with my gut, but I can't really tell you exactly why I feel that way. So I'm not going to like preach about it. But it's like, this guy went with a gut feeling and preached about it in a condescending way, not knowing really consciously any of what he was saying, not knowing why he believed what he believed, and he paid for it in backlash, and it clearly got under his skin. More well-adjusted individuals, I think, will take similar sorts of situations, and they never end up making crap like this, because they're not these terminally online, like, I mean, every single thing in this is like a I don't care. He doesn't care. Uh, this is projection. I don't care, and I'm telling you I don't care. You clearly do care. It's like, bud, people are... Don't be a loser like me. This is hypocrisy. I don't even have to read all of that to understand that that's hypocritical. Wow, look at that. Fan art. Now I'm gonna get inundated with fan art. All you do is go and complain online about things. Oh, I think I've seen this one before. I mean, this could be, I feel like this one's actually a little more rational, but not because this individual knows how to actually explain it, but because it's actually correct and not just like being... Well, then again, I'm not going to dig into it because I don't want to spend any more time getting extremely nuanced about things when it's like, okay, I think this has gone on long enough. It's been like 2 hours. It's a little ridiculous. But it's like, yeah, this is immensely ironic. Oh, and it ratioed. If you have a problem with any of my fictional pairings that I enjoy on the internet, for the low cost of $9,000, you can pay me to care what you think. This is the nth time he's reposted this exact thread. At this point, he's doing it for attention. Really? He's reposted this multiple times? Well, no wonder it's doing so poorly. But yeah, take care of your mental health. Okay. I got out of therapy 2 hours ago. I have a feeling that if you were as well adjusted, then you wouldn't be making crap like this. And I'm just interested in opening up an actual nuanced discussion about topics such as this that I find interesting, which is why I went on my tirade. It's not really a tirade. I was pretty dang calm about it, but I do find it quite interesting. And in a lot of cases, it's telling. When people do stuff like that, oh, I definitely don't care. Well, clearly you care. It's like, okay, let's stop. Let's stop like flinging the playground insults at each other. Like, oh, you care so much about that. Like this doesn't matter. This doesn't like affect anything. Like, why are we even talking about this? It's just strange. Because if someone shows up to the debate, throwing decorum out the window, not showing that they clearly don't understand what they're talking about, and don't understand what the counter arguments to any of the positions that they have are, pulling out whataboutisms, pulling out false equivalencies, and being smug about it the entire way, and then being like, thanks for the engagement. Like, okay, man. Okay. I feel like you are projecting when you talk about people being, like, caring. It's like, oh, I don't care. I promise I don't care about it. It's like, no, you're absolutely crying about it. This is coming from a very emotionally sensitive autistic person, and it's like, yeah, you're absolutely crying about it, man. And it's okay. I don't necessarily blame you for being sensitive. What I do blame you for is being stupid, by not being able to take the heat, really. Because if you truly didn't care yourself, I feel like you would have left it alone, or you would have had a calm, rational debate about it with somebody and had closure on it eventually, and you would have actually been able to move on. But apparently, you've been reposting it multiple times, and it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here and ramble for like 2 hours because I find this discussion to be very interesting, and then I'm gonna leave it alone because I've probably done thinking about it, at least for the time being. Perhaps the conversation will come up again, but scheisse. It's very interesting to see stuff like that happen.